Hi, today is November 4th, 2015, and I'm conducting my ethnographic interview with Katie, and she's with me right now. So, hi Katie, would you like to give a quick background or just introduce yourself for the interview?
Sure. Hi, I'm Katie Hluchyj. I was Katie Martin when I was at Dartmouth. I graduated in 2003. I'm originally from Vermont, and I went to Dartmouth, then went out to LA and taught English as a second language. Then practiced law, doing advocacy for kids, then headed back to the classroom, and now I teach Spanish in Hartford, Vermont.
Very cool. So can you talk a little bit about, I know that you went on the CCSP trip while you were in college, and can you talk about how you got involved in all that process and travels?
Oh, okay. So I saw an ad posted in the Tucker Foundation for a data collection assistant when I was a junior. I had just gotten back from the environmental studies trip to South Africa, and so I don't know, I really enjoyed being abroad. I didn't travel much growing up outside the country, and had a chance to experience life in a very different culture. And I was planning to major in Spanish at the time, and loved the idea of going to a Spanish-speaking country to do some similar work. And they were looking for a data collection assistant for a study on heavy metals contamination, and it said, we need someone to help clip fingernails and toenails. And I said, interesting. If I could go abroad and do that, and that would help my Spanish skills, and it'd be a lot of fun. So that's how I ended up going to SIUNA the first time. And that was not through the CCESP, but a student who went on the first CCESP named Joel Wickery created the study with the help of some people. I don't remember even who he was working through, but I know you guys read in class about the study.
Mm-hmm.
So Margaret Carrigus was the woman's name, and she was somehow affiliated with Dartmouth, but they were doing the study on metals contamination, and he got the idea to do it when he was on this first CCESP, came back and wanted to know more about some of the things he'd heard about how gold mining had affected the town and how people were having higher rates of cancer and other problems based on environmental contamination. So he puts together this study and was looking for a data collection assistant. And so I spent spring term of my junior year in SIUNA living at Uricon, the university there, with Joel, walking to farms and households and collecting fingernails and toenails. And
It's crazy.
It was amazing because just getting to know people there, we were the only two Americans, and gave us the real benefit of having to dive in and speak Spanish and learn about the culture. And when I got there, the town was out of power for the first 20 days that we were there.
Wow.
So there was nothing to do at night, once the generators turned off, other than talk to people. So sitting around on the water truck and some just pieces of cement block, we would just sit around and talk with the students. Learned a ton about the area, and I became interested. I was taking some geography classes and environmental studies classes at the time, and I wanted to know more about the politics and the economics of drinking water. Why were people having these problems to begin with? I was not a science person, so I wanted to know more about the human side of things. So I put together a thesis proposal to do interviews like what you're doing, but with farmers and politicians, local politicians and politicians at the national level. And then I even ended up going down to the Inter-American Development Bank in DC and talking to some of the people that did the coordination of the projects, and just looking at the many levels of development and how things impact the local community. So this is a roundabout way of telling you how I ended up on the CCESP. I went back on the CCESP the second year it happened, sort of the December after I spent a semester in SIUNA, and helped with the construction team.
That's so cool,
and
the development team.
Yeah.
Were you able to conduct interviews when you were there?
Yes, so that's what I did. While I was there, I did half the time, working with it was the construction team and the medical team for us. So I was doing construction, and then, when I was not doing that, I was doing interviews.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And that was what you came back and kind of consolidated into your thesis project?
Yes,
senior
exactly.
year. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. And so what were some of the insights that you gained, either just for your researchers specifically, from being on the CCSP experience?
Oh, so much. Just to start with, there are so many different ways of living. I think it made me both appreciate some aspects of life here and, you know, also reevaluate some of the things that, you know, either I did or ways I stressed, you know, and like ways that I looked at life that like I thought that people brought a different perspective on, you know, like appreciating like conversation and in relationships sometimes taking priority over work or taking priority over, you know, like that to-do list that sometimes I think happens here. So, you know, just like new ways to look at life. I was really surprised by a lot of the questions people asked me. I remember there was another student that was so surprised that I could drive a car. And because at the time there were only like, you know, a few taxis in Siuna, but like most people didn't know how to drive. And, you know, it's like stuff like that I, you know, hadn't really thought about, you know, like that wouldn't be something that would be an expectation, you know, that people would be able to do that. Or like another question that another kid asked me was, you know, like, does all your food come in boxes and cans? You know, like that perception that in the United States, you know, like nobody grows their own food, you know, so like all sorts of little things like that I think was the most like insight that I gained into like life stuff. But then there was also the like insight into like drinking water, you know, and like it really surprised me that it could go, you know, under the government's radar, you know, to provide drinking water to like this huge municipality that like did not have it, you know, like either like didn't have running water or didn't have clean water, and how little in relative terms that it cost. It would cost about $2 million to build this system to bring water from a river that was clean, and they just couldn't do it, you know, either pulling together that fund, that money like as a community or getting it from the national government. And it was like a relatively voiceless region, and also a region that was not very accessible. Like the roads from Managua were very bad, and the infrastructure just to get materials out there, you know, so like there were a lot of challenges that existed that weren't challenges that I had thought of. And also, you know, like land rights, you know, like to get water from the river, there was, you know, a lot of issues with, you know, going through farmers' land, you know, so, you know, like the laws that we have, you know, make it very, like, easy, relatively speaking, to make things happen, and the infrastructure we have. So, you know, it wasn't just money that was limiting them, but also, like, such a small amount of money was limiting them. So those are two things that surprised me that I, like, remember. You know, it's been a while. It's been, you know, more than a decade.
But, so were you able to interview the people in D.C. to kind of figure out what the policies were from abroad? Yeah,
and, like, it was very surprising, you know, like, it was a bit detached, you know, like, you know, grand plans, and then, you know, have money be there to do a project that has to funnel down into, you know, like, through local organizations, but then first through the government. Right. So by the time it gets to the people, it's not necessarily either going to a community like Siuna, like, it'll go to Nicaragua, and but not necessarily getting out to the region where it's needed.
Right. And were you able to go to Nicaragua in between these couple of years since the CCSP trip?
So like the next time, so I felt like it was like one of those things. I thought about going back right after college to work for Bridges Community, but like I decided to do something else. I decided I really wanted to try teaching, and ended up going to LA and teaching English as a second language.
Yeah.
And it was always this piece that was like a loose end that I never did anything more with. That. It's like, you know, like that. I spent so much of college like focused on this town and like this issue, and it like randomly came back around when I started teaching Spanish. I got back in touch with Bridges to say, hey, are you guys still running trips? I contacted Dartmouth to see if they were still sending students with Bridges to say, hey, you know, like, is this organization still as awesome as it was back in the day? And everything checked out to be pretty great. And I had a chance to take students the first time to the Dominican Republic because it was a bit cheaper to try their new program out.
Oh, okay.
And then, but I really wanted to go back to Siuna. So.
And was this through your LA school?
No, this was through Hartford High School.
Oh, you were back at Hartford.
Yeah.
Okay.
And no, in LA, I didn't do anything with this for like 10 years.
Oh, okay.
And,
okay.
To finally be able to bring students to Siuna was like a phenomenal experience.
That's amazing.
And it's a place that means a lot to me. And like there were a few things that were just like shocking about going back. First of all, like one would think, or like I guess I thought, you know, naively that they would have, you know, figured out a way to provide clean water to the people that live there in the decade that has, you know, passed between the time I was there last. And still, water does not run in people's homes every day of the week. in the main part of the city. Say nothing about like the rural areas where people walk still distances to get water, but like they have to store it in, you know, containers and stuff for days because water runs like 2 or 3 times a week. And I'm still not sure, like I didn't have a chance to find out this trip, you know, like what is the source of the system that they're using now? Like I'm really curious, like did they end up using the River Utley, which is what they were looking at as a safe source, or are they using other things? And, you know, I started to ask questions, but we were in the community of Rosa Grande, so we were outside the main part of Siuna. So when I go back next year, I, you know, like, will be a little bit less focused on all the logistics of bringing students, because that'll be an easier piece, and I can ask some more questions about, you know, what's going on with water.
Right. And have you ever shared your research with the people there about what you've gathered in terms of data and with all the interviewers?
So not really, you know, like a bit the past trip, you know, just talking with people, and Joel shared, you know, the results of the study. So like they got that information, but like not, you know, I've never like shared my thesis with them because it's like one of those things that's pretty academic and not like, not something you sit down and read for fun. But if I can find ways to do that, I absolutely love to, you know, just as a piece of history. And I'm sure people have done more, you know, like important research since then.
Yeah.
I've shared it with other Dartmouth students. There was a student going down there from the engineering school right after. This is like a couple years after I graduated. I passed it on to him because they were looking at water projects. And, you know, I've always hoped it would be, like, somehow useful because it felt like, you know, like big. It's one of the things that actually made me not want to go into academics. Like, because I thought of going into, like, development studies or something afterwards. But, like, I felt like I was writing about this problem that, like, writing about it wasn't going to do anything, you know? And, like, that's something that I felt as a major challenge or, like, you know, like, it's like I wanted to, like, fix this thing. But, like, to fit, like, there were obstacles that were, like, far bigger than I was, you know? So no, I didn't, you know, like have a chance to share it in the way that I would like.
Yeah.
But being back there was amazing, and I felt like that made me feel like some of the time spent was like worthwhile to be able to share it with my students in a different way than if I hadn't been there. And like I want to over time develop a relationship like what Dartmouth has with Siuna to bring students there every year. Right now I have like the permission to take them there every 2 years. So we're heading back next November, and I was trying to think, there's something, the other thing that was really cool about going back there, one of the kids that, or like students from Urcon went with us to all the different houses, like to be sort of our, you know, local like translator and, you know, cultural ambassador, you know, do like who are these random, you know, American people who are, or like people from the U.S. who are, you know, asking questions about your toenails. that takes a little bit of like explanation from somebody who's from that community, you know. And his name was Ervin, and I got back there and I was like, hey, you know, like, does anybody know this guy, Ervin Rokas? And it turns out he like works as a translator now for bridges sometimes, and he's teaching English at the local school. And he was so interested in picking up like English expressions, and we'd trade, you know, like how to say things or like, you know, joke around jokes and sayings and all this stuff. So, and he was like, I ended up, like, somebody had his phone number, I called him. I was like, I don't know if you remember me, but, like, I was here. Because, you know, sometimes, like, if you go to a place, it's more significant to you than it is to the people who, like, live there and have, like, a visitor from another place. But, like, so he's like, Katie! And he was like, I'll be right over. So, to the hotel where we were staying on the airstrip in Siuna, like, you'll stay at, like, a little hotel before you head out to Rosa Grande. So we're there. He, like, rides over on his moped with a picture that I had sent him, I sent, like, to all my friends there, like, pictures. It was, you know, in the time where Facebook did not exist.
Right.
So I sent by mail a photo that he still had. And, like, when he showed up with the photo, it was just, like, one of those moments where you're like, wow. You know, like, life, like, things happen. And you never know when they'll, like, circle back around and you meet people and spend time with them. And even if years pass, you know, it's like, and then he showed my students around Urcon where he's going to be a professor.
That's incredible.
And it was just very, very cool way to tie things back together.
And what were some of the main developments that you saw in the most recent trips, maybe, since like 2002 even?
So one thing that like was really cool is they were working. A major problem that I saw when I was there is they did not have like a good system of collecting garbage, and the town's gotten a garbage truck. So that's like a cool you know, thing that's really like made drastic improvements for them. The infrastructure was better. There was like consistent electricity. the baseball stadium has been renovated.
Very cool.
And wait till you see, it's like the center of the town is like the baseball stadium. But the town looked basically the same, you know.
Okay.
And it's, you know, same old Siuna. And, you know, it felt like the same as before. There are a few more taxi cabs, but it hasn't, you know, like become
industrialized.
Yeah, exactly.
But what about the people? Did you notice any change in the thinking, especially since Bridges to Community has like been there for a longer time now, and they've forged this relationship? Just sort of this idea of like, are they used to these like constant service trips coming in, and has that changed their perspective maybe?
So it was pretty similar actually in the first trip, because we were working with the women's movement in the middle of Siuna. Like we were in a different community, so it's like a bit of an apples and oranges thing, because like, but at the same time, you know, like the community leaders were very like strong, or the sense of community. I feel like in Nicaragua, like I don't know if it's the history and, you know, the ability of communities to organize around ideas and projects. I think it's extremely strong there, and I saw that the last time, just like I saw it, you know, like when I was there on the CCSP, you know, like with the women's movement to build the clinic, they were really able to mobilize people in the community through like a couple of strong leaders. And the same thing was true in Rosa Grande, through like the man who hosted us at his house. Like he led the local chocolate cooperative, and he had a very similar way of, you know, bringing in all the key players in the community, and like bringing in, you know, just everybody by his like strength of personality.
Yeah.
And both him and the woman who ran the women's movement were very open to volunteers from another culture, and like the idea of sharing, you know, like that's something I really like about Bridges, and hasn't always, like I've looked into some other, you know, organizations that have volunteer trips, and I don't think that it's across the board that way, you know, like where there's like a real sense of connection between the organization and the community. And I really felt like it was like an equal exchange of ideas, and like there was much more about the ideas than the work, and there's no sense of like, oh, here are these people coming to like help us, because clearly like the work that we did was work that Nicaraguans can do better, you know, like, so like the local albañil, I'm trying to remember the word, in like masons, like the stone masons, like those guys do stuff that, you know, like they're teaching us to do it, you know. Clearly the local volunteers are doing the work better, so it's not a, like, let's come help people who like need to like see how, you know, how to do things right, you know, like, and sometimes I felt like, even I looked into Peace Corps, some of it felt like let the you know, Westerners or the people from the U.S. come teach you how things are done, and like I don't get that feeling with Bridges at all, and I didn't get the feeling that the people there felt that, you know, like, and I thought that was nice both times, and in the Dominican Republic when we were there. So I think it's like really has to do with the way the organization works, and believe, you know, like they're the people that work for them are also like from Siuna, and that like to me was very nice. You know what I mean? Like it's not. You know, it felt like I didn't feel awkward in the relationship there. You know what I mean? Like it was not like an us them sort of thing. There was like you know, you're here to learn from us. We're here to like learn from you guys.
Right.
You know?
So what do you think that we're bringing as volunteers then? If it's just more of like they are doing the job better, do you think that we're playing a bigger role, or do you think that they didn't really need us at all? More of just like the idea of development would have helped them, rather than a physical group coming in.
So, you know, I think the benefit is it's similar to, like, I remember when I was in, like, this is totally different, but, like, when I was in 3rd grade, we had an intern from Japan who came and worked at our school. And I learned so much about, like, Japanese culture, and, like, got so inspired to, like, learn about the world from her. Like, this woman, Maki Takigawa, and she, like, taught us to make sushi and, like, all these things. And it just made me think, wow, there's this whole other way of doing things out there. You know, like, when we go there, it's like the same idea, you know, like there's a bigger world out there. It's like from a lot of my students, in both trips I had students that had never been on an airplane and have never seen the world outside of, you know, Vermont or like the Upper Valley. Like the furthest they've been is Boston, and like for them, it's like a chance to talk to people who do things differently, or like who like have different foods, different likes, dislikes, you know, but also really like the same basics, you know, like, you know, what's important to them, like you know, family being happy and, like, you know, doing well for themselves and their people, you know, like, so to see, you know, to just get that window on the world, like, we're bringing that to people who, like, may not get out, you know, and see the world, you know, like, just like my students may not get out and see the world, you know, like, so, like, I feel like it's the perspectives that we bring is, like, way, way, way more important. That it's, like, the volunteer work is just, like, a means to an end.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and so maybe along that note, what would be your perspective on, have you heard of the concept of, like, volunteerism and this idea of just maybe like being a little more morally, like a righteous state of just, like, I'm getting more out of this than, like, maybe what I'm giving. But
the voyeuristic, you know.
Yeah, so, exactly, yeah.
When we were in South Africa, we did this, like, walkthrough of Soweto, which is, like, a township outside of Johannesburg, and, like, it was I felt like I was there, like, in a voyeuristic, like, let me see it, like, how poor people live, you know, and, like, it felt bad, you know, like, but there's something, like, I do think that we bring, like who's watching who, you know, like, when you're, like, spending a week and, like, taking the time to be present in somebody's community, and, like, depending on how you approach it, and I think it's really important for, like, the volunteers to approach it in, like, a, you know, give and take manner, and, like, it's hard to communicate that to students before they go too, and I think, like, it just kind of happens as people make friends, that it's much more about, like, the friendships you make, and in that sense, it's not, like, you know, like, you're running through for, like, this quick, like, I don't know how to put it, like, it's a meaningful experience for everybody, you know, so, like, in that sense, I don't feel like it's, like, a thing that we benefit more, and I think, but there's also this, like, responsibility that comes with it, you know, like, what are you going to do with it when you get back, you know, whether it's, like, direct or very indirect, you know, like, in terms of telling people, you know, like, there's a big world out there that needs your resources, your talents, your, like, your attention, and sharing that with whoever it is that, you know, are your pressure points, like, how can you make change, like, and, like, it's tough because, like, you can't go, like, fix things, you know, like, then, and in a sense, like, they can't fix things for us either, you know, like, the things that are, you know, troublesome in our society or in our culture, like, it bothered me that there were a lot, like, all these people without a basic resource, you know, like, did I, like, bring anything to the table, even though I, like, writing something on it? No, but, like, at the same time, like, did it shape, like, everything I did after in terms of, like, what my goals were? Like, absolutely, like, without a doubt, it was, like, a transformative experience in terms of not, you know, like, I want to share the perspective of, like, there's a gap, there's, like, a huge resource gap in the world, and, like, the more people that are, like, working on that in different ways, like, the better, you know, but it's, like, in our country too. So, like, that figuring out what to do with the haves and have-nots things, like, like, I don't know, that it's something that's, like, we don't solve it by going to, like, do, like, some construction work for a week, but it's, like, a opening of that sort of, what do you do with your life sort of conversation, I think, with yourself.
Right, and when you go on those trips, what are some of the biggest challenges you face in terms of just, like, maintaining these connection and then coming back and, like, you resume your life here, but then you're going on these trips again, so, like, how do you kind of sort through all those thoughts and things like that?
I had a really hard time when I got back, you know, and feeling, like, unable to stay connected to it, you know, because it was also a lot harder, you know, people did not have access to email, and, you know, it was like, I would write a letter, you know, by mail, and did I do well at that? No, you know, like, in terms of, like, I kept in touch for a little while with a couple of people, but it's going to be much easier now, in terms of, like, I think that's why I really want to, like, develop a relationship with one place, and this place, you know, like, with my students, because it's, like, to build something bigger than, you know, 1 week in one place. Definitely. And for my students that go, it'll be, like, 1 week, one time, unless they, you know, then bring it to their college, or, like, they do something to bring them back there. But hopefully maybe they'll just, like, think about things in a new way, or go on to, you know, pursue some, you know, area of, like, service, in the sense of, you know, like, I think service is a pretty broad thing, you know, like, you can work on the issues that you see there, like in so many different ways.
Definitely. And so what are, can you tell us a little bit about what your trip is going to be like when you go with your high school students?
So let's see. We did one trip there already. So last November, we stayed in Rosa Grande at like the same house where you guys will stay.
Okay.
All in bunk beds, and it was just amazing because like, you know, you're there with 16. I had 16 students there, and we were sharing the latrines with the family. So you'd walk through their kitchen. So you really get to know the people that you're staying with, and all the local kids come hang out, and my students get to like play games, you know, like Duck Duck Goose or you know, color with the little kids, and like they have a chance to really like work on their Spanish, and they have a chance to like you know, do like activities and like work that they wouldn't otherwise do, and a lot of them like, you know, had a chance to go help out in the kitchen and, you know, talk with the women that worked there, and I don't know, like every day was really fun and different. I want to go the next time for a little bit longer. It's just like the Dartmouth trip's 2 weeks, right?
Yes.
So our trip was 1 week and it was too short. Like by the time you get there, like the plane ride out there and everything, it's like you got 2 days taken care of there. So I think we're gonna go longer the next time.
Okay. And
work on the same projects, you know, like whatever Bridges is working on.
Oh, okay.
You know,
so it is through Bridges also.
Through Bridges also. So it's really similar to what your trip will be.
Very cool.
And one thing I really like that Professor Moody's doing is that class based on, you know, Nicaragua, like, and to have students learn a lot before they go, because we did meetings and stuff last time, but that's something like that's really important to me. I get like I've started this thing where I change the topic of my advanced seminar each year, so I think I'm going to do Nicaragua for the next trip before we go, so the students go in really well prepared. Will you come talk?
Of course, yeah.
Awesome.
I think
love
anyone from our class would love to be like present on the trip.
Because that would be amazing, you know,
definitely.
And really give my students a chance to, you know, it's like way cooler to hear from you guys than it is to hear from me, you know.
The most recent travelers there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any last minute questions that you'd like to ask me, maybe?
What are you most excited about for the trip?
So I think that I'm most excited, like you said, to just like feel that sense of connection as soon as I get there, because I think for me, a sense of community is like the driving force for wanting to go abroad and feel like I did something internationally and even in these like developing countries, and gaining a bigger perspective about what I want to do with my life. I think that's very important for me, or how I know services always are, I want it to be a big part of my life, and figuring out how I'm going to integrate that in would be so much easier the more perspective I have from different types of cultures and just from different communities and different needs that I think that need to be met sooner than later.
Totally.
So I'm excited for that.
That's
and
awesome.
To practice my Spanish, because I haven't spoken Spanish since high school. So
this is something new.
It'll be exciting.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I hope it's a like great experience.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Anytime.
And thank you for this interview.
You bet. And if there's anything you need like in the future, please never hesitate.
Definitely. Thank you so much.